Good afternoon. So, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we will continue. So, in the previous class, we were discussing about an example problem, how to solve an example problem, which was 1D transient heat conduction problem without any source term. And the idea was actually, it was not to just show that how to solve this problem, it was just to show how we can use the finite difference method to solve similar type of problems. Okay, so for that we took one example, but you can apply the similar type of or similar analogous uh, schemes or method to solve other problems also. So in that, what we did, we had taken we had taken the governing equation for the 1D transient heat conduction problem, and we replaced the derivatives with appropriate differences, finite differences, based on our Taylor series approximation that we have studied in the previous class. And ultimately, we found that we can write the equation in this form for each control volume. Okay, each control volume or each grid point. In this case, it's not a control volume, it's a grid point. So for each grid point I, we can write the temperature for the k plus 1 at time step in terms of the temperature at k time step, means the previous time step for the same grid point, and in terms of the temperature at the neighboring grid points. I plus 1 is the neighboring on the right side and I minus 1 is the neighboring grid point on the left side. Let me just keep this diagram open here. So for this value, we found that we can use these three values, temperature at these 3 points, to find the value of the of this temperature. Similarly, for the next temperature, we can use the below 3 points again for finding the temperature. So like this, we can find for all the internal points. External points are the boundary or initial conditions. Okay, and this method that we had discussed in detail, we we discussed that this is known as explicit method. Why is it called explicit method? Because explicitly you can find the value of the temperature at any point based on the previous points. You don't need to do uh, iterative solution, or you don't need to go for simultaneous solution of all the equations. Just by solving one equation for one point, you can directly get the value for that point, okay, independently. And I had also discussed how to actually proceed. So how to proceed starting from the first point for which the value is not known, which is the I equal to 2. I equal to 1 value is known because of boundary condition. And then we saw how to calculate for I equal to 2, I equal to 3, I equal to 4, like this. For the second time step, at the first time step, means at the initial time, already the value is known because of initial condition. For the next time step, we can find out the value using the equation that we had derived, this equation. So for this point, we need these three values and which are already known. Again, for this next point, we need these three values which are already known. Like this, we can find the temperature at the k equal to 2 times step for all the grid points I going from 2 to n minus 1. Once these values are known, we can obviously find out the next time step value k equal to 3 based on the k equal to 2 values for all the internal grid points I equal to 2 to I equal to n minus 1, and we can proceed along the time direction along the k values by increasing values of k, which is known as time marching. So this was our explicit scheme, and we discussed that this is not the only scheme. We can also go for an implicit approach. What was the difference? Instead of calculating this derivative, the space derivative del square t del x square, instead of calculating this derivative based on the previous values of temperature, previous time step value of temperature, we can take the current time step value also. And if we take only the current time step value, it is known as fully implicit scheme. So in that case, the derivative will be written like this. alpha del square t del x square is equal to ti plus 1 k plus 1. So this is the difference, k plus 1 minus 2 ti k plus 1 plus ti minus 1 k plus 1 by delta x square. Or we can take an average of the previous time step and the current time step. So in that case, we will have to write the temperature at I plus 1 as half Ti plus 1 K plus 1 plus Ti plus 1 K. Similarly, the temperature Ti will be written as half Ti K plus 1 plus Ti K. Similarly, for any other point, we can take the average. So this is linear average, and this is known as Crank-Nicolson scheme or semi-implicit scheme. But we can take any average, any weighted average, where the weight can vary from 0 to 1. That also we have discussed. If the weight is 0, it leads to the explicit scheme. If the weight is 1, it is the fully implicit scheme. And weight is equal to 0.5, it is the Crank-Nicolson scheme. Okay, but it can vary. So we can decide what is the weight. Generally, we just fix on a scheme and try to solve a problem based on the scheme. But if you want very accurate results or very high numerical efficiency, then you have to think about these things. We have also discussed. We just open this. So we have also seen that there can be different types of examples, physical actual examples, how the temperature varies with time. For example, temperature can decrease exponentially with time. In that case, within a time step, most of the time step is occupied by the new temperature, while only a small amount of the time step is near to the old temperature. So in this case, fully implicit scheme will be much more like better suitable as compared to the explicit or Crank-Nicolson scheme, because we are assuming in fully implicit scheme, we are assuming that this temperature is the temperature valid for the entire domain. So we are calculating the energy transfer based on this temperature. Why I am saying energy transfer? Because we are calculating the derivative d square t dx square, which is basically a representative of the conductive heat transfer, energy transfer. That's why I'm saying energy transfer. So if the process is another type, say like this, it goes slowly and then suddenly changes, then explicit scheme will capture that physics better. These are not the only consideration, obviously. There are other important considerations like stability and other considerations. But this is also a consideration. Or this also, we should know that the schemes are related with the physical. So what is the physical significance of the scheme in terms of the evolution of a variable value? Okay, for example, evolution of temperature. If the temperature decreases linearly in a problem or increases linearly, then Crank-Nicolson scheme will be very accurate, because we will assume that this is the temperature and average temperature, and based on this, if we calculate the energy transfer or the derivatives, it should be most accurate. So this we had discussed. So we started discussing about the Crank-Nicolson scheme. The same example, but with Crank-Nicolson scheme. Any questions from the previous class discussion? Because we will continue the same discussion today. No question. Okay. So for the Crank-Nicolson scheme, as you know, we have to take the derivatives for the spatial derivatives, del square t del x square. For this, we need to take the temperature as the average temperature of the new time step and the previous time step. Okay. So for calculating the spatial derivative, we take the temperature as the average temperature of the new time step and the previous time step. So what was the what is the equation? Finite difference expression for second order term. The finite difference expression for second order term is this. For a general second order term, alpha del square t del x square is equal to alpha. So if the space steps are I, is denoted by I, so ti plus 1 comma k minus 2 tik plus ti minus 1 comma k for the kth time step. So time step does not, for the, this was for the explicit scheme, but at this point forget about the time step. Just consider that there are grid points along the x direction. So we write the derivative del square t del x square in terms of ti plus 1 minus 2ti plus ti minus 1 by delta x square. Now, where the effect of time step comes into picture, when we are considering that it's a time marching problem, at what time to take this value of temperature, because the temperature is, because we are calculating the space derivative and the time is actually changing. So initially it may be 10 seconds and in the next time step it is 10.1 second. So the time has changed from 10 second to 10.1 second, and in that duration there may be lot of change in the temperature. So initially if I take the temperatures at 10 seconds for calculating the derivative, this may be very different from, say, if I take the temperatures at 10.1 second for calculating the derivatives. Okay. So that's why that is the difference between the different schemes. So for explicit schemes, we are going to take the values at 10 second only. For the fully implicit scheme, we are going to take the values at 10.1 second only. And for the Crank-Nicolson scheme, we are going to take the average of the value of temperature at 10 second and 10.1 second. So exactly linear average or like the mean of the temperatures. So remember that for the new time step, 10.1 second in our example, we do not know the values. We can write in terms of the variables, but we do not know the values. But at the old time step, which is at 10 second for our case, we know the values. Okay. So that is also something that needs to be kept in mind. So now exactly the same expression can be written, but instead of writing ti plus 1, for the kth time step, we have to write the average value of ti plus 1. Okay, for the Crank-Nicolson scheme. So how this looks like, again, we have discussed this, but I'm just for the sake of continuity, I'm again starting from the beginning. So for the same problem, del t is equal to alpha del square t del x square. Left side is still similar. So ti k plus 1 minus ti k by delta t. Okay, is the temporal derivative. The spatial derivative now is alpha. So in case of explicit scheme, we have ti plus 1 k, but now it is half ti plus 1 k plus 1, which is the new value at 10.1 seconds, say, for our example, plus ti plus 1 k, which is the old value at 10 seconds. Okay, so this first term is unknown, second term is known. Minus 2 into half, again the average. Instead of ti k, we are again taking average of ti k plus 1 and ti k. Okay, similarly, plus instead of ti minus 1 k, we are taking the average of ti minus 1 k plus 1 and ti minus 1 k divided by delta x square. This is the only change. Although it looks like a minimal change, but it drastically changes the solution procedure. Okay, because now you have more unknowns. One equation, but now we have three unknowns. Previously we had one equation, one unknown. We can directly solve it, but now we have one equation. This equation, if we rearrange, we will see that there are three unknowns. What are the three unknowns? The three temperature values. So I will now go to the corresponding plot for the Crank-Nicolson scheme. Okay. So this equation has these 6 temperature values. I am trying to find the temperature value, this temperature value, Ti at k plus 1. Okay, this is the value we are trying to find. But we also have these two unknowns in the equation. And we have these 3 temperature values, Ti minus 1 at k, Ti at k, and Ti plus 1 at k. These are all known. So 3 unknowns and 1 equation. Okay, so directly we cannot solve this. That's the thing. So I will come to the solution process, but let us just look at the algebraic rearrangement. So now you can rearrange the same equation. So by taking delta t to the other side, okay, and rearranging the terms, we get alpha delta t. So we had discussed this in the previous class also. Alpha delta t by 2 delta x square. This one, ti minus 1 k plus 1, which comes from this term. Right? Yes, so ti minus 1 k plus 1 plus this third term, alpha delta t by 2 delta x square, ti plus 1 k plus 1. This comes from this term. And minus of 1 plus alpha delta t by delta x square ti k plus 1. So this one is for this term ti k plus 1 with a minus sign, and this comes to this side ti k plus 1, and that becomes negative sign. So this has both the terms, this term plus this term. I hope you can see the screen. Okay. And there is no, so remember there may be sometimes lag. So when I'm speaking something and saying this term, you may be seeing something different. So because of lag in the on-screen movement, means my voice will come faster to you as compared to the on-screen movement, depending on your internet connection or my internet connection. So that you have to keep in mind. I should also try to say the terms instead of saying this term. So on the right hand side, what we have all the terms for the old time step, which we can take to the left side. So this actually are all the terms which we have taken to the left side. So within the bracket we have alpha delta t by 2 delta x square, 2 del 2 because of this ti plus 1 k. Okay. Negative sign is because we have taken this term to the left hand side. Then the second term is alpha delta t by 2 delta x square into 2, because we have already divided by 2, so we are multiplying in by 2 into 2 ti comma k. Okay. And the third term is this term ti minus 1 k, similar to ti plus 1 comma k. Again, because you are taking to the other side, this negative sign is there. But this one, this is actually negative. When you take to the other side, it becomes positive. So we have double negative. Okay. So this is correct. There is a sign mistake, I think, here, because this term is already here, minus ti comma k. So it should be minus ti comma k. So ultimately, what we have done is we have written the equation where on the left hand side we have three unknowns. What are the three unknowns? At the k plus 1 time step, we have the temperature unknowns at I minus 1 grid point, I grid point, and I plus 1 grid points. On the right hand side, we have everything known. So TIK is known from previous calculation. We have done some calculation to reach this time step, right? So it is already known. Then what are the other terms? Ti plus 1k and Ti minus 1k. So these are also known because all the temperatures at that time is known from previous calculation. So if this time is 10 seconds, we know all the temperature at 10 seconds. Now we are trying to find out the temperatures 10.1 second. So we can just write this to simplify things. We can just write in terms of coefficients. So this entire right hand side we can put it as ki. Okay. Why I? Because it is this calculation we are doing for the ith grid point. Okay, ith grid point. And this actually ideally it should be written as ai, because this can vary, but in our case this is not varying because we have taken constant alpha, constant delta t, and delta x square. So in this case, alpha delta t by delta x square we are writing as a. Okay. And similarly this term also, alpha delta t by 2 delta x square we are writing as a. And this term minus 1 plus alpha delta t by delta x square we are writing as b. So our equation is a ti minus 1 k plus 1 plus b ti k plus 1 plus a ti plus 1 k plus 1 equal to ki. So again, just reiterating, these are the three unknowns: ti minus 1 k plus 1, ti k plus 1, and ti plus 1 k plus 1. A, b, and k are known. Okay, a is known because alpha is a material property, diffusivity. Delta t is a numerical parameter, time step, which we are specifying. It is known to us. And delta x also is a numerical parameter. It is the grid step. That also we are specifying. That is also known to us. So A is known and similarly B is known. Okay. So in our case, we have taken a simple problem where alpha is constant, delta t is constant, delta x is constant. So A and B are constant for any I. But in real life, it may happen that delta x can vary. If some of you have done more complicated CFD problems, you know that we can vary the grid spacing. Means we can have very fine grids near a region where sharp changes occur. Say I want to calculate the shear stress. So near the wall, I can have very fine grid points, but at the center of the domain, I can have a grid points far away. Okay, fine grid points means the grid points are very close to each other. Coarse grid point means grid points are far away. So let me just, all of you know these things, but those couple of students are there who have no familiarity. It's just a revision for the others, I guess. Where is my pen? So say we have a structure like this. Right? A wall is there, and I want to calculate the effect of flow. Okay, how the flow fluid propagates, or it's a channel. So one of the better options to take the grids in this case is that I have along this channel direction, let us call that channel direction as X, I can have grids which are equally spaced. Okay. Need not be. For the entry region, I can have closer grids because entry region again, lot of change will occur. Like this, we can have. These are our grid points, so finite difference. This we can solve using finite difference. Similarly, at the boundary also you will have one line. Here also grid points. But along the y direction, you can change the length of the grid points. So if I have so I can have very close grid points here. Okay. So for example, I can have this grid point. Then gradually I can increase the distances. And again gradually close down. Obviously, corresponding to this, there will be again grid points in the along the entire length. So why this is done? Because if flow changes are very prominent near the wall, most of the changes occur. Shear stress calculation also has to be done near the wall. So it captures the phenomena more accurately if I have fine spacing. So now you can ask, but sir, we can take the small spacing if it is more accurate for the entire domain. If you take that, then the number of points will increase, and accordingly your calculation time will increase dramatically. So you don't need, if you don't need something, we don't do it, because unnecessarily we don't want to spend too much time on running the simulations. Anyway, we were digressing. Let us come back to this. So in that case, what will happen? In the case that I have shown to you, if this is our direction, you can see the delta y in this case is changing. Or if I consider this axis as x, delta x is changing. So basically the space step is changing. So this delta x square term will not remain same. So A can vary. A and B will vary with or different grid points. So in that case, for a general equation, better to write it as AI Ti minus 1 K plus 1 plus Bi Ti K plus 1 plus AI Ti plus 1 K plus 1, or even it can be Ci Ti plus 1 K plus 1 equal to Ki, okay, for the ith grid point. So we have one equation and three unknowns. So similar equations can be derived for all the grid points. How many grid points are there? If I have n number of grid points, I going from 1 to n, for I equal to 1, the value is known because of boundary condition. For I is equal to n, the value is known because of boundary condition. So unknown values are at n minus 2 grid points. So we have unknown values at n minus 2 grid points, and if we develop the equations for each grid point, we will have n minus 2 equations also. Starting from this equation for this, like this, we will have n minus 2 equations and n minus 2 unknowns, but they are coupled together because in each of the equation, instead of one unknown, we have three unknowns. Okay, so that's why we cannot just solve them one by one. We have to solve them all together because they are coupled together. This is the difference between any implicit scheme or semi-implicit scheme and fully explicit scheme. In fully explicit scheme, this problem was not there. Then we have discussed that typically we are going to denote by the general convention. Instead of writing ti minus 1 comma k plus 1, we will write ti minus 1 k plus 1 with the time step in the superscript and the space step in the index in the subscript. This is the general formulation, general notation, which is used in practice. So now how will we solve? We will write the end all these equations, right? We'll write all this equation. Let us write the equation because this is the first case for us. On next cases, you will be able to do it very quickly, easily. So for the first grid point, okay, this point. I'm finding it difficult to concentrate today. Okay, for this first grid point, which is I equal to 2. Okay, first grid point is I equal to 2. This one. So we can write the equations or equation for I equal to 2. You can see from here. We'll have the I minus 1 term, which is 1. Okay, so A T1. Or if I start from the first time step, so for this case, let us consider. So for this point, the equation is A T1 at k plus 1. Okay, means at 2. Okay, because these k values are already known at 1. Plus B T2. So A T1 is this one. Sorry. Yes, correct. Plus B T2 at 2 plus C T3. Sorry, A T3 at 2. So these are the 3 points is equal to K2, where K2 has all the information about these 3 points. Okay. We have already seen K2 has already the information about these 3 points. Similarly, for the next point is I equal to 3. So we can run a loop. I equal to 3 is this point. So for this point, again, our equation will be AT2, okay, at time 2 plus BT3 at time 2 plus AT4 at time 2 is equal to K3, where K3 has the information about these 3 cells, from these 3 cells. Okay. So like this, we will proceed ultimately up to I is equal to n minus 1, which is this point. For I is equal to n minus 1, the equation will have ATn minus 2. Okay. Here I have not written, I have written for the general k at time step, but we'll have ATn minus 2 at the second time step plus BTn minus 1 at the second time step plus ATn at the second time step is equal to Kn minus 1. Okay, where Kn minus 1 will have all these 3 information. So what we will have is n minus 2 equations with this n minus 2 unknowns, which we can solve together. Okay, so if we, instead of second time step, we consider general time step, kth time step, we can write these equations in this form: AT1 k plus 1 plus BT2 k plus 1. So for this point, plus AT3 k plus 1. So using these 3 points, this point, and this point, we are writing the equation for this is equal to K2, which is the values for this. Similarly, for the next one, we can again write AT2 k plus 1 plus BT3 k plus 1 plus AT4 k plus 1 is equal to K3. Again, using these 3 points. And we have already seen the case. For a ith grid point, general ith grid point, you have ATI minus 1 k plus 1 plus BTI k plus 1 plus CTI plus 1 k plus, sorry, ATI plus 1 k plus 1 is equal to Ki, where Ki has all this information. And the last one is ATN minus 2 k plus 1 plus BTN minus 1 k plus 1 plus ATN k plus 1 equal to Kn minus 1. So n minus 2 equations, n minus 2 unknowns, we can write this in this matrix form. Okay. If you write in the matrix form, let us show the equations here so that you can compare. So the first equation, we will start for first equation for t equal to 2. Okay. So b into t2k plus 1, this term, right? b into t2k plus 1 plus a into t3k plus 1, this term. Okay. Is equal to k2 minus at1k plus 1. Okay. Is equal to k2 minus at1k plus 1, which we can write as k2 dash. Okay. K2 dash is equal to k2 minus at1k plus 1. Why we have written it like this? Because T1 is known. T1 is known. Why? Because T1 is the boundary temperature, boundary condition. So this line, similarly for the next line, you will have this line A into T2k plus 1 plus B into T3k plus 1 plus A into T4k plus 1 next term plus all the other terms are 0, right? So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 into something, 0 into something, 0, 0, 0 like this is equal to K3. Okay. So like this we will continue until you reach the n minus 1 term. For n minus 1 term, 0 into T2k plus 1 plus 0 into T3k plus 1 plus 0 into T4k plus 1, like this you continue until you reach towards the end where A into Tn minus 1 k plus 1. Sorry, A into Tn minus 2 k plus 1. A into Tn minus 2 k plus 1 plus B into Tn minus 1 k plus 1 plus A Tn k plus 1 is equal to Kn minus 1. So this term is again known because Tn is boundary temperature. So we can write this as is equal to Kn minus 1 minus A Tn k plus 1. Okay. So which we can write as Kn minus 1 dash, which is Kn minus 1 minus A Tn k plus 1. This is a known value. So this is our governing equations in the discretized form written in a matrix formation. Okay. So the discretized governing equations. Because we had n number of grid points, we have n minus 2 number of equations, considering that the two boundary grid point values are known. If the boundary grid point values were not known, then we would have had n equations, and we had to solve for n equations. Okay. So what is a situation where we can solve the problem, but the boundary temperatures are not known, but still we can solve the problem? Can there be any problem which we can solve in CFD, but the boundary temperature is not known or not given?
Sir, then kind of flux boundary condition makes it easy.
Heat flux kind of condition, right? Heat flux kind of condition is also a boundary condition, but there we do not specify the temperature. We write that minus k dt dx is equal to some value. So that some value is given, which is a known value. So in that case, minus k dt dx some value means you can rewrite that as t at this point, say t at this point minus t at this point, which is delta t, by delta x, which is dt dx, into k. So minus k dt dx is equal to that value. So we can write in terms of these 2 points the boundary condition, but this temperature will be unknown. So we will have additional equation for that boundary depending on the boundary condition. So it's not that always you will have n minus 2 equations. You can also have n minus 1 equations if in one boundary flux type of condition is given, or you can have n equations also. So now, what is the size of this matrix? N minus 2 by n minus 2, and these vectors are of n minus 2 length. Okay. This all the values in this matrix is known, unknown, and all the values in this vector are known. Only unknown is this. Okay, so if I write this as A T equal to K, we can find T is equal to A inverse K. Okay, so it's basically you need to do a matrix inversion to find the value of temperature. So matrix inversion is a numerically time consuming process. Okay, although in MATLAB you can do it in one step, but actual calculation, if you have to do this thousands of times, it will take large amount of time. So there are better methods that has been developed to deal with this type of cases, which takes into account some of the properties of this matrix. Okay, one of the important property of this matrix is that it is a very sparse matrix. It only has values along the three diagonals, and there are all the other values are zero. So this is known as a tri-diagonal matrix. Because it is a tri-diagonal matrix, we can solve with much less computational effort this equation instead of directly by trying to use some brute force method like Gaussian elimination. We will discuss those things later in the course. Okay. But that is the idea. So at this point, if you are new to CFD, not at all you have not at all studied, the point to take from this discussion is that we have reduced our problem, a physical problem like heat conduction, unsteady heat conduction, first into a discretized equation for each grid point. So for explicit scheme, it is easy to solve, but for the implicit or semi-implicit scheme, we have reduced it to a set of equations. Because we had n minus n points, we have reduced it to n minus 2 equations and n minus 2 unknowns. And now we can solve those equations using any method to find the unknowns, but we have to solve them simultaneously. Okay, so that is the idea. So if it is in MATLAB, we can do it in one step, but in real life, you can develop better algorithms for solving it. Any questions? No questions. So I've already discussed the coefficient matrix is a tridiagonal matrix. It's a very important property of this matrix, and it is what actually helps us in very quickly solving the problem. Because if we use normal, we will see later, we will have a discussion on what are the typical solution times. Okay, so normal say Gaussian elimination type of process, what is the, does anyone know, if I have n points, how does the time scale with the number of points? If I have 100 points and it takes 1 hour to solve the problem, then how much time will it take for solving for 200 points approximately? 100 points 1 hour. How much time it will take for 200 points for solving the problem? Means if we are using Gaussian elimination, how does the time scale with the number of points, number of equations, solving time? Any idea? You have studied in my previous course, some of you. Math students should also know. So for those type of problems, those actually take a lot of time. The dependency is n cube. Okay. So if n is the number of grids, the time scales as n cube. If you have 100 grid points and it takes 1 hour to solve, if you have 200 grid points, it will take 8 hours to solve, because you have double the number of points, double the number of equations. Your time will increase by 2 to the power 3, 2 cube, 8 times. Okay. So now you can imagine the difficulty. So say I have a 1D problem is fine. I have 100 grid points. But what if I have a 2D grid, 2D problem? So in that 2D problem, we have to divide both the dimensions into 100 by 100 grid points. So I will have 10,000 grid points. So for 10,000 grid points, say the problem is running fast and it is taking 1 hour. But I find that the results are not satisfactory. I have to, sorry, if it's a 1D problem, say it was taking 1 second to solve. I'm just giving very small time. If it is a 1D problem, it was taking 1 second to solve for a 100 grid point case. Now you are not satisfied with 1D. You say that no, sir, I want to solve in 2D because it will give us more accurate results. But now my grid points has increased from 100 to 10,000 because we have converted from 1D to 2D. Okay. So because there is a 100 times increase in the number of grid points, the solution time will not scale as 100. Means solution time will not increase 100 times. Although the number of grid points has increased 100 times. So instead of 1 second, it will not take me 100 seconds to solve. How much time will it take to solve the 2D problem? For the example that I have given. Somebody has to respond. Otherwise, there is no discussion. It will become like a monologue. So I will repeat again. For 100 grid points, it was taking 1 second. Now, because we want to do it in 2D, again with the same grid spacing, I want same grid spacing. So I have a 1 meter rod, 1 meter plate, I was solving in 1D. So in that case, I had taken grid spacing of 10 mm. Okay, so I had 100 grid points. So it was taking 1 second for me to solve the problem. Now I want to keep the grid spacing same, 10 mm only. But because now I have two directions, I have 100 into 100, 10,000 grid points. So now how much time will it take for solving that problem instead of 1D? So I am saying that it won't be 100 seconds. Although the number of grid points has increased by 100, the time required will not increase by 100 times. How much time will it take to solve approximately the same problem?
Sir, 10,000?
Not 10,000. Why 10,000? What is the logic?
Sir, like we are changing it from 1D to 2D, which means it has like now it has 2 degree of freedom, so that's why I'm like making it square, not cube.
Correct. Then why the
So,
time is
so
10,000?
sir, because the number of this grid points, like grids are increased by 100 times, and previously it was taking us 1 second to solve. So,
Hmm.
so that's why I like 100, and for 2 degrees of freedom, it will again get multiplied by 100. That's why I think.
No. Up to that point, it was fine. That number of grid points has increased by 100 times. But degrees of freedom, there is no like nothing to do with degrees of freedom. So I was saying, right, that the number of steps that are required for that this matrix inversion or calculation for solving scales as n cube, number of equations. Okay. So if you double the number of equations, which basically means if you double the number of grid points, your number of steps or the time required depends on the number of steps. So number of the time required will increase by 2 cube times 2 to the power 3. Okay. That is the point. So if I increase by 100 grid points, 100 times the grid points, my time requirement will increase by how much?
So 100 cube.
100 cube, correct? 100 cube is 1 million. So 1 million seconds. So instead of 1 second, 1 million second is how much time in terms of hours or days? Can anyone give a quick estimation? 1 day is how much? How many seconds? No idea. These things will be very trivial things for you guys. 1 day is 86,400 seconds. Okay. So approximately say 1 lakh second. So 1 million second means approximately 10 days. So instead of 1 second, the problem now takes 10 days to solve. You can imagine what is this drastic change, how it will hamper the, say, any research work or any calculation, any design work. Okay. So that's why there are better methods which do not scale as n cube. Okay. So we will later see that there is a method called tri-diagonal matrix algorithm which just scales as n. Okay, because of this particular nature of the matrix, because it is a tri-diagonal matrix. That's why it scales as n, and that's why when the number of grid points increase by 100, the time will also increase just by 100 times. So instead of 1 second, it will take 100 seconds. So these things are very important later on when you do real life problems, because we have lot of time and computational constant. Not we, means everybody, any company, organization. So I used to work in R&D department in very cutting edge research we used to do for gas turbine blade manufacturing in GE. And the simulations that we used to run were almost at the limit. Means we used to run simulations. Each was a parallel simulation which used to run it on 128 processors, and still used to take 1 month or 1.5 months to complete. So you can imagine that if there I make a small mistake or small change which increases the time factor by 10 times, it is not feasible, because instead of 1 month, it will take 1 year for the simulation to run. And it's a huge cost for the company, because you are running supercomputers for large number of simulations like this. And running supercomputers take a lot of resources, dedicated resources. So anyway, so the small thing sometimes has a lot of effect. I think I have given another example to you guys or somebody else, maybe my research students, that one of my students had developed a code for some research problem, okay, on energy storage, and the code was supposed to run very fast, but somehow it was taking many hours to do the first step itself. Then we found that small problem. It was not a problem, it's just a minor optimization that we did, and instead of hours, now it takes a few seconds to do the same thing because of that small change. So sometimes the small changes can lead to drastic changes in output time. I used to teach MATLAB also, and in that course also I used to show some interesting cases where just by making a small change in the algorithm, you can dramatically, means 10,000, you can make the code 10,000 times faster. Or if you make a small mistake, the code will run 10,000 times slower. So we have to be careful of these things later on. At this point, you don't have to bother with this. I'm just giving you some insight how real life situations work. At this point, you know, just to solve this equation, we have to just solve this, like invert this matrix. So we can write this as AT equal to K, and then we will find T is equal to A inverse K. So that you can directly do in MATLAB for your problems, because your example problems will be in very small scale. So time is not a factor. But for research problems, those who are already working on research with me, they already know that how critical is time, how much time it takes for solving one problem. The second point is that values of A and B for each row can vary depending on variation of properties. We have already discussed. Okay, like delta X can change. If delta X changes, the value of A will change. Similarly, alpha can also change, right? Thermal conductivity can change. Density can change. We can have a composite material. One place we have high density, on another place we have low density on other side. The density can change. So CP can change. So K by rho CP can change. So depending on those, the value of AB can be different. This set of equations can be solved by different algorithms such as matrix inversion, Gaussian elimination, or Thomas algorithm. Thomas algorithm is the tri-diagonal matrix algorithm that we will discuss later. We will also discuss I don't think we'll discuss Gaussian elimination because it's a standard method in maths. Everybody knows this. You can read about it if you want. So, okay. Any questions? I have a question because you are not asking any questions. Tell me a situation when this matrix that we have developed, okay, after writing the equations, we have developed this matrix. Instead of tri-diagonal, it will be give me two situations, okay. So at least one from each, because there can be very multiple situations. Give me two situations when this tri-diagonal matrix can be a pentadiagonal matrix. Instead of values along 3 diagonals, I have values along 5 diagonals. Okay, and obviously it will take more time to solve that. So what can be a situation when I have a pentadiagonal matrix? This type of questions can be expected in the exam. We will be submitting the exam questions by 2nd September, and exams I think start from 13th September. Any answers?
Sir, if we use higher order discretization model,
Very good. Very good. If you use higher order discretization, then instead of 3 points, I will need 5 points for the second order derivative, right? So very good. So in that case, if I have 5 points, I will have points like I minus 2, I minus 1, I plus 1, and I plus 2. So these equations, I will have 5 unknowns. Basically, means you will have Ti minus 2, Ti minus 1, Ti plus 1, and Ti plus 2. So it will be a pentadiagonal matrix. Okay. Then what can be, who answered this question?
Sir Shivam.
Shivam, good. What can be another situation apart from this, where we are using a same discretization scheme, means not higher order. We are using a same discretization scheme, but still we have a pentadiagonal matrix. You have to think logically. So logically thinking means we have to relate what leads to what cause leads to what effect. Okay. So in the previous case, you have nicely explained that if we use a higher order discretization scheme, then we'll have why, because higher order discretization schemes will need more points, 5 points for the calculation of the derivative. 5 points means that 5 unknowns will be there in each equation, which means that I will have 5 diagonals. So again, I need 5 diagonals. So which means by logic that I need 5 points, 5 unknowns, okay, in the equation. So when can there be 5 unknowns in the equation, but still the discretization scheme? It's a somewhat advanced question. Still the discretization scheme is same, but still 5 unknowns are there in the equation. Later on, you will encounter that type of. So it will happen if I have a 2D problem. If I have a 2D problem, so the value at this point will depend on both the all 4 neighboring points. Okay, so in that cases, this type of situation may arise. It may not arise if you take just simplistic view, but it can arise if you want to take all the points into account, all the neighboring points into account. Anyway, but it's the main answer that I was looking, you have already given, which is that higher order schemes. So let us take a break here and continue this discussion after the break. Today I'm finding it difficult. I had an accident, and so I am under some heavy duty painkillers, which is causing a lot of drowsiness. So I cannot focus too much. We will manage, but somehow my focus is getting interrupted. because of these painkillers. Actually, I was very lucky to escape. I had met an accident on the highway where I crashed and fell from my bike and just narrowly escaped running under a truck. Just went very near to me. So it's a very scary experience. Somehow I escaped with very less injuries, but still it has shaken me. Anyway, so we'll take a 5-minute break and then we will continue this discussion. So we'll continue. Can you see the screen and hear my voice? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We'll continue. So you should be able to do same type of formulation or derive same type of this type of set of equations for the fully implicit scheme or any of the say any weighted averages also, like generalized implicit scheme also you should be able to. Just a second. Okay. A second. Okay. Am I audible? Please again, please let me know.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So for any of these schemes, Crank-Nicolson or any other implicit scheme, you should be able to derive similar set of equations. And ultimately, all these equations will be of the same form. You will have a matrix of this form, and then this unknown variables in a vector form, and known values in another vector form. And so the main say advantage of this all this type of formulation is that once you have written in this form, you can use the same solver to solve these equations. Means we can just do, we can write this as a t equal to k, and then we can write t is equal to a inverse k, and we can do same type. So the values of the coefficients may change, a, b, these values may change, and these k values may change, but the process will remain same. So we can use the same solver for any type of schemes or any equations or any physical problems once we develop a solver like this. Okay. So that is the main advantage. That's how we generally work in CFD. So we develop, we means not I, means we are, I'm saying the general CFD community. So general CFD community works in that fashion. Okay. They develop a code or a solver which can solve many general type of problems. And then based on the actual problem, these values A, B, and all these values change. So accordingly, they use the same solver for solving it. It's the same for say commercial software like ANSYS. Many of you have used ANSYS Fluent. So there also you give all the data. Internally, what they are doing, they are discretizing it using any of the discretization schemes that you are specifying, and then they are the software is actually calculating these coefficients and then solving in similar manner using many of the schemes that are available. So solving using the already inbuilt solver and giving the output values. Okay, so that is the thing. So let us look at a few more small but important details. Okay, so at this point you should have an idea about how to solve that problem. If you want to implement for practice, you can do it. I will give you an assignment. I will discuss it today and formally also post it in a couple of days when I feel a little better on MS Teams, and you will have a couple, if you will have some time to do the assignment. Okay, so we'll decide what will be the due date. So it may not be urgent, but that practice will give you some good idea about what are the intricacies in solving or in developing a CFD code. And you will also feel good because you will be able to see how to solve a practical problem using very simple tools. Let us look at some of the other important things. So one is the effect of nonlinearity. Okay. So say the diffusivity is a function of temperature. We are solving for the temperature, but the diffusivity itself is a function of temperature. Now our equation becomes, equation is still same, right? What was the equation? This is the equation. Del T is equal to alpha del square T del x square. It's same equation. But this alpha is a function of temperature now. is not constant. That's why we have written it like this. Alpha is a function of temperature. So now if you want to solve, so now again one extra consideration comes into picture. How to calculate the value of alpha? Because alpha is a function of temperature. Which temperature to take? So at least it is clear that if I am calculating the alpha for ith grid point, I have to take the temperature for the ith grid point. But whether to take the ith grid point value temperature for the previous time step or the new time step or some average, that again we have to decide. Okay. So again for explicit method, because we generally use the previous time step value, we will calculate alpha based on the previous time step value of t. And because it is already known, alpha is also known, and then we can directly solve it and get tik plus 1. So there is no problem, as alpha can be directly calculated using the previous time step value tik. Okay. So explicit method, non-linearity is no issue. However, whenever we have a semi-implicit or fully implicit scheme, or any implicit scheme, means non-explicit scheme, okay, then the non-linearity brings a major complication. Okay. For example, let us again consider our Crank-Nicolson method. In this case, we can write this alpha as average of alpha at tik plus 1 new time step plus alpha at old time step tik. Okay. So now wherever there is alpha in the Crank-Nicolson derivation, where was the derivation? Let us take a look. This equation. Wherever there is alpha, we need to put. So there is this alpha is there. We need to put this now instead of constant alpha. We will put half alpha at tik plus 1 plus alpha at tik. Okay. So now what will happen? There will be terms which are products of the dependent variables. Okay. So terms like this. So alpha into ti plus 1 k plus 1. So alpha itself is a unknown term. Alpha is a function of ti, okay, at k plus 1, and this is also unknown. So you have two unknown terms. So you have a non-linear term. Okay. Similarly, we will have another term. What happened? Lag in audio. Can you hear me? Lag, I cannot do anything about lag, but if you can hear me, we'll just have to continue like this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can hear you, but at times there is a lag in the audio.
That will be there. That you have to bear with that. That I have already said. Lag will be there. So you have to go by the voice and you have to understand what I'm trying to talk. But if you do not hear me, then let me know, because then we have to pause and again I have to repeat what I was telling. Okay. But lag is unavoidable. So as I was saying, so for example, again this term alpha, which is a function of ti at k plus 1, and this tik plus 1 term is there. So again, this is a product of two unknown terms. So it becomes non-linear. Okay. So leads to non-linear algebraic equations. Simultaneously solving a large number of non-linear equations is a very difficult process computationally. Okay. So then it leads to other challenges. So what we need to do in those cases are we can do an iterative scheme. Iterative schemes mean one of the terms, say this alpha value, which is using tik plus 1, we have to take the previous iteration value and then find the other unknown, and then again repeat the process. Means say for this one value we have taken from previous iteration and we are finding the current iteration value of temperature. Then using that current iteration value in the calculating the value of alpha, we are again repeating the process, again finding new iteration value of alpha, t. Like this we continue until we reach a stable solution, converse solution. Okay. Another option is to linearize the terms. We will see what is linearization later, but basically you convert it into some sort of equivalent linear form. Okay. So this is one important consideration. but this shows that we can deal with non-linearity. We can deal with non-linearity, or it's only that the complication, there is somewhat more complication in solving the equation. So we have discussed about explicit and implicit scheme. Let us formally just have a discussion on what are the advantages and disadvantages of these schemes. Okay, what are the advantages and disadvantages of these schemes? And then we will discuss about an assignment problem, a practice problem, what can be practiced and how to approach that problem, so that you have some hints on how to solve it instead of directly jumping into the problem. So what are the advantages of explicit method? We have already seen that we can separately solve each equation because it is not dependent on any other unknowns. So one unknown per equation. So we can directly solve and get the value. So as a result, it is easy to implement, and also it is easy to do the time marching type of problem. It's just based on previous time step value, you can calculate the new time step value, continue like this. Simple to set up, which we already understand, because you don't need to simultaneously solve a set of equations. So it becomes much easier. It also means that it will take much less time to solve the equations, because you don't need matrix inversion. However, we will see later that it needs to satisfy a criteria, stability criteria. What is this stability criteria? If you have not done this course, the stability criteria is a criteria which dictates what should be the value of time step, and this is dependent on the properties and the space step delta x value. Okay, so the smaller the value of delta x, smaller the value of time step we need to take for an explicit scheme. Okay, and we will see later that this time step depends on delta x square. Okay, so if I have say 10 millimeter grid size, means each of the grid points spacing between two grid points is 10 millimeter, and I find that the problem is solvable while taking a time step of 1 second. Okay, so then for 5 millimeter grid size, if I have twice the number of points, so that the space between the points is decreased to half the value, 5 millimeter instead of 10 millimeter. My time step needs to be reduced by 4 times, because time step depends on the square of this grid spacing. So instead of 1 second, I will have to take 0.25 second. Okay, it means that number of time step will increase. So if I need to solve say physical situation, heating for 100 seconds, so instead of 100 time step, now I will need 400 time step. Okay, higher the number of grid points, the time step will be dramatically increased and the reduced, and the number of time steps will dramatically increase. So simulation time will increase. Okay. If you do not take this small delta t, your solution will become unstable, which we will discuss in the next class what is unstable, and will actually diverge, means it will go in the wrong direction. It will give you a wrong value. This is particularly important, this consideration, when you need fine grids. So consider a situation, again, as I was saying, that some change is occurring very rapidly, like a what can be a situation for very fine grids? Say you have rapid change in the near a wall. Okay, that is happening. Or you have a complicated geometry where some region is very large, say like a casting. Okay, you have some region which is very large, but there are some channels which is very small, very narrow. Okay, so you need very fine grid spacing for that. Now you cannot take different time steps for different locations. So ultimately, your time step will be dictated by the smallest grid spacing, and smallest grid spacing is in the narrow, dependent on the narrowest region. Okay, and as a result, you will have very small time steps. So it will lead to very large number of time steps and very large simulation time. So I hope I was able to make you understand what I mean. So again, I have a geometry like this. Okay. Something like this. some jet is coming from here, thin jet is coming from here. So this is quite wide. So for example, this is quite wide, but this jet entry nozzle is very thin. Okay, and this is my problem domain. So in this case, you need very fine grid points in this location. You will, I cannot show it here, but you will. So you will need points like this so that you can resolve the properties and resolve the velocity, and in this location the velocity profile. So because you are taking very small grid steps here, maybe you will take large grid points here, very far away, okay, much farther. But because you have to take very small spacing here, your delta t, which will be proportional to delta x square, if you take this this delta x to calculate delta t, the solution will diverge for these points. Okay, so your delta t has to be lower than a minimum cutoff. Okay, so sorry, lower than a maximum, lower than a cutoff value. So because this cutoff value will be dictated by the minimum spacing, your delta t will become very small for this domain. So ultimately, for the entire solution, you will have very less delta t, and so if delta t is say 10 to the power minus 3 seconds instead of 1 second, so for 100 seconds instead of 100 time steps, now you will need 100 into 1000 time steps, so which is 1 lakh time steps. So dramatically your simulation time will increase. Okay, so this is the main drawback of XPC script, but otherwise it is very easy to set up and solve a problem, and we use it very frequently. It's very useful. Particularly, it is very useful for very complicated geometries. Okay, complicated geometries. Complicated physics. Complicated physics means that the equation is very complicated. So in that case, doing a say non-linearity. So in those type of situations, explicit method is easier to implement and much easier to solve. Okay, not complicated geometry. I mean complicated physics. Okay. Also remember that simulation runtime per time step is less. Okay, so even if the number of time steps is slightly more, because the runtime per time step is much less, because you don't need any matrix inversion or simultaneous solution of equations. So the process may be much faster also. It depends on how many time steps are there. On the contrary, for implicit method, main disadvantage is that you need to simultaneously solve a system of equations, which is computationally expensive, difficult to implement, and will take more time per time step. Okay, more runtime per time step. But the advantage is that we can take larger value of delta t, like the situation that I was showing. For this type of situation, I can take larger value of delta t, right? And however, it is much more difficult to implement, much more complex. Okay. One problem here in this case is that even though you can take large value of delta t without affecting the stability, the error will increase. Okay. So now you can get confused here. This will become clear in the next class. You can say that, sir, it is stable, but what do you mean by error will increase? Okay. So stability and accuracy are two different things, as we will see later. Okay. Stability means that the solution is going towards the correct solution. Okay. Although it is going towards the correct solution, it does not mean that you cannot say that it means that the error is less. Ultimately, there is always some error in the numerical model because you are using some approximation to replace the analytical solution. Okay. So this approximation is because you are truncating the infinite number of terms that was present in the Taylor series, removing most of the terms and taking only a few terms. Okay. So this will always lead to some truncation error. Okay. So what will happen is that if you take large delta t, remember that the truncation error will be the truncation error for the temporal step. time step means the temporal term del t is first order in delta t. Okay, so for larger delta t, the error increases, but we are still going towards the correct solution. We will reach the correct solution within a margin of error, but that error will be larger. Okay, so this is one drawback of, although we can use larger delta t, it is only a drawback if you need very accurate solutions. Otherwise, it's not a big deal. Okay, and for steady state calculation, this is no problem. Why for steady state calculation this is no problem?
So the temperature doesn't change with delta T.
Delta t, right? So delta t has no role because that unsteady term has no role. Del t. So ultimately, there is no, because that has no role. There is no truncation error also associated with delta t. Okay. Another problem is that due to larger delta t, we may not be able to accurately represent the time-wise variation of the actual physical phenomena. Okay, what does it mean? Again, if I look at this, actual physical phenomena, this causes always problem. Just a second. So, say some temperature variation is there. Okay. Temperature variation with time looks like this. Some variation is there with time. Okay, say this is T at any of the grid points. Okay. This is time. At any grid point, there is a some temperature variation like this is occurring. Anything, I'm just putting some example. Okay. Now, if you have very small time steps, okay, basically we are dividing along the time direction, right? If I have small time steps like this given by the green points, these are my time points, okay, and the distance between each green point is the time step. So the variation from one time step, drawing here will be difficult, but I will try to show. Like this, you can imagine. Okay, so I am taking this temperature, I am taking this temperature, this temperature, this temperature, this temperature, this temperature, like this. Okay, you can imagine. Just assume that it is above this line. So it is like a plot with lot of points. Okay. So ultimately, remember, you have only values at discrete points. Although I am showing it as a continuous line, we do not have those values. What we have is these points. Okay, like what I am showing here. So something like this we have for that location. We have this type of points. So you can see that we are quite accurately representing the actual temperature variation of the physical phenomenon. Now, if the time step was very large, okay, I'm giving exaggerated situation. So this is the time step. Because implicit scheme, we can go for very large time steps. This is the time step. So what values we will have? We will have this value. Then somewhere along this, we will have another value. Somewhere along this, we will have another value, and another value. Okay. So ultimately, what you will have is, so you do not know the variation in between. So when you join them, you will have to join somehow. So you will maybe join them linearly. Okay. Drawing is not accurate, but I hope you get the idea. Want to draw a straight line here, but unable to draw this using this. Again, this is not correct. Let me try like this. Chalkboard is much better. I like drawing using chalk and board. Something like this. It is supposed to be straight line. So what you are capturing, this one and the other case is like these points. The second case is much more inaccurate. You do not actually know what is the like this intricate variation in the slope. You are not able to capture using less number of points. So obviously, more the number of points, more accurate will be the details. So the physics sometimes get distorted because you are taking larger time step. So that is what I am trying to mean here. Okay. Another, these are the disadvantages. I mixed up the advantages and disadvantages. So it is not that here it's not like school, right? We are not trying to memorize these things. We are just trying to understand these things. So it's not that we need 5 advantages and 5 disadvantages, something like that. So we are just looking at the properties. So then there is a big advantage also, which we have already discussed. If the geometry is complex, there may be some regions which we need fine grid spacing to resolve the details, as I have shown you. In this case, the implicit method is better. Okay. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of explicit and implicit schemes. So now what I will do is I will just discuss with you an example problem which I am intending to give you as an assignment to write a program so that you can have some practice on the finite difference method. And in the next class, we will have a brief discussion on stability and error propagation. And then we will go into finite volume method for the rest of the course. Any questions? What is present? Okay. So no questions. So let us take up an example problem. Say we have a. So now we will consider a realistic problem. Okay. So we have a circular plate like this. We have a, let me see whether I will not. Are there geometrical figures here? Has anyone used this Microsoft whiteboard? Do you know whether there are geometrical figures here, like circles, squares, automatically, like it is there in say Word or PowerPoint? What does this mean? I will get connected to PowerPoint. We will see later in the next class. Let me just go on with this today. Maybe something is there here. Into shape. Let's try this. Nothing has changed. This is better. So Okay, so we have a circular plate like this. Okay, and it's a metallic plate. Okay, you can take any material property. You can take any material property. So let us say that this is either a aluminium plate or a copper plate. Okay, with high thermal conductivity. And in the center, and it has a certain radius. It has a certain radius. The capital R is the radius. Okay. Actual what is the actual numerical value does not matter, because your code should be such that we should be able to give the numerical value as an input. So if I give 50 centimeter, that code should also work. If I give 30 centimeter, that should also work. So the code should be able to take the numerical value. Okay. And in the central region, there is a heater. So you can consider like a plate which is heated over a stove. Okay. Or a pan which is getting heated over a stove. So we have a central region like this. Not considering circle. No, my drawing is too inaccurate for this software. So we have a central region like this where it is getting heated, and the radius for this is say R. Okay, it is R, small r. Okay. So it's like a heater is placed there, or the pan is placed over a heater or a stove or some heating coil. Okay, it can be larger also. And initially, this plate is at a certain temperature Ti. Okay, initially the entire plate is at certain temperature Ti. Maybe it is at room temperature, but this also should be variable, maybe 300 Kelvin. And there is a constant heat source, okay, for this heater. Okay, so this is 1000 watt. Again, this can be variable, but it is some heat is given. Q is equal to 1000 watt. Okay, for the entire area, it is spread say equally. It is equally distributed. Now we want to find out the variation in this of temperature in this plate with R, and basically with R, because it's sorry, with R and time. Okay, so let me just give some different variable name. This is say Ri and this is Ro. Okay. We want to find the temperature variation with at any location, say this point, which is R distance away. Along the theta direction, temperature variation is similar because it's an axisymmetric type of problem. Okay, so temperature is a function of R and time t. Okay, so for any location at any time, we want to find the temperature variation. So this is the problem initially. Then what we will do, we will try to, means as a second step, you will try to find the steady state solution, okay, for this problem directly, and then you can compare your unsteady solution, which is changing with time, whether it is reaching towards the steady state solution or not. Okay. So for finding the steady state solution, you cannot use so you will need to solve all the equations simultaneously. For unsteady solution, you can use the explicit scheme. Okay, so use the explicit scheme for solving this and implement the program to find the temperature variation with for any location in the plate at any time. Okay, this is a 1D problem. I will give a 2D problem later on. So I will formally give this assignment later. Any questions?
Sir, was it like a spherical type of body or a cylindrical?
It's a plate. It's a
Plate,
2D
okay.
object. 2D object. It's a plate. We are not considering the third dimension. It's like the tawa, like you make roti, right? So that we have placed over a stove, and it is getting heated at the center. Maybe the central region is larger, and or you have placed it over a heater, okay, and it is getting heated at the central region with uniform heat flux, okay, and the stove is providing 100 watt of heat per second, means 100 watt of heat means 100 joules of heat per second. So now what is the change in temperature of this tawa? Okay, from the center to the end with time. You have to take a boundary condition at this end. Nobody has asked this. So you have to take a boundary condition. T is equal to T at RO is equal to, you take some boundary condition. That also you can take as room temperature Ti, or but it will not be room temperature. What you should take is heat flux conditions like this. H T at RO minus T surrounding, okay, plus T at RO power 4 minus T surrounding to the power 4. I'm missing something here or not? You just check. But basically, it means that from this size there is heat removal due to convection and radiation. Don't go by these equations. You just check on your own and find out what should be the exact boundary condition. What I want is that there is heat loss occurring from this side due to convection and radiation. Okay. So now we are trying to find how the temperature in the tawa or this circular plate is rising with time. Okay. This is a real life problem. So accordingly, you might have to take the time step, very small time step or large time step, whatever, based on the situation. And if we can check for, say, if I have double the power, double the heat input, then how fast the change is occurring. So I will ask you to draw some plots and other things that I will let you know in the assignment. Like you should draw plots like this: temperature versus R at different times. Okay, temperature versus R at different times. At different T. Similarly, average temperature for say different Q. So a lot of things can be done, checked. If the heat transfer coefficient increases, how the temperature varies. If the size of the heating region increases, how the temperature varies. If the size of the plate increases, how the temperature varies. You want to check that. So using finite difference X2C scheme, it should not be difficult at all. Governing equation will be different, remember, because it's what coordinate system we have to use here? We have to use a cylindrical coordinate system, right? Accordingly, you have to take the governing equation and then solve it. Initially, I thought of giving a 2D problem, but I think it is better just to get a feel of how to work on finite difference, or just how to implement the CFD code using 1D, because 2D is just more complication. Any other question?
One doubt.
Yes.
Sir, like we are giving some input heat condition, like the heat is supplied from the heater.
Yes.
But like in the outer region where we are putting this flux boundary condition, heat flux, so there we need something like the amount of heat flux being generated at the center, that will be equal to the heat flux going outside. So heat flux will be in like watt per meter square. So should we give heat or heat flux as our internal cylindrical boundary condition?
No, no. There are two questions actually in your question. One is that whatever amount of heat is coming, whether the same amount of heat is going out. Okay. So that will only occur when you reach steady state. Okay. Before that, the amount of heat that is coming in will not be equal to the heat that is going out. The heat that is going out will be less as compared to the heat coming in, and as a result, the temperature will increase. Why? Because initially the temperature Ti is initial temperature of the plate is Ti, right? 300 Kelvin. So initial surrounding temperature is also 300 Kelvin. Okay. So there is no heat loss at all. So once you put some heat input, the heat loss increases because this T increases. T at the boundary will increase with time, right? So as the T at the boundary increases with time, you will see that H T minus Ts will increase, and similarly this will dramatically increase, right? Tr0 minus T to the power 4 minus Ts to the power 4. Okay, so this heat loss will increase. So ultimately, this temperature will keep on increasing until you reach a temperature at which point the heat that is being put 100 watt, 1000 watt is equal to the heat which is going out from this side. Now the 100 watt that you are giving is not a heat flux, is the 100 watt is valid for the entire circular region. Okay, you have to divide it obviously into heat flux for each grid point, how much heat flux is there for each grid point. But say there are 100 or 10 grid points in this circle. So for that entire thing, we have 100 watt power, okay, 1000 watt power. And at steady state, obviously, the heat that will go out is also 1000 watt. So what will happen is that in this case, if you have number of say grid points, so your 1000 watt will get divided by the number of grid points. For each grid point, you will be able to find out what is the heat flux. In this case, it will be watt per meter. Okay, because actually it's watt per meter square always, but the the other dimension we are assuming to be unit because you are solving it in 2D. So we will write it as watt per meter. Okay, so in this case, this condition will be still be 1000 watt, not watt per meter square. But you have to calculate what will be the value for each grid point, okay, based on your grid spacing. And that should be part of the program. It's not that you calculate it before and then give it. So because I can give different grid spacing, I can say that instead of 100 grid points, I want to take 500 grid points. Automatically, the code should be able to calculate what is the heat flux per grid point. Okay, that has to be. Another thing you have to take into notice is that you will be solving it as a 1D problem. Although it's a 2D problem, you are solving it as a 1D problem. Okay, so then you have to take care on how you are calculating the for individual grid points, how you are calculating the heat flux. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. You can discuss among yourself, but please try to solve and write the code on your own. Okay, it is very easy for me to check also, but that is not the point. It is getting marks, because marks for these assignments, only small marks are there, right? More about the project and exam. So it is more of that for learning. So if you just don't do anything on your own, you will not be able to learn properly. And without practice, CFD, there is no use, because as I always give the example, like it's like learning swimming by just watching YouTube videos. You will not learn anything by watching YouTube videos of swimming, right? So similarly, without solving CFD problem, you will not learn anything about CFD. You will just learn some theory about CFD. So that is the difference. So this is a different type of course. Stop the recording.